everybody. Danielle Egnew here. Welcome to inPsight Radio, where you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. So glad you guys could join me this week. I'm super excited to get into the show today because we have got such an incredible prescription for how to feel better with all of these crazy energies that are hitting the world right now. I mean, we really do have some energies that are really, really intense right now. And thankfully, Mother Earth has provided us with some really incredible resources to make ourselves feel better. And one of the most incredible things that I've noticed that we can really put to work for ourselves during this time frame are not only prescriptive stones, but watching what we're actually eating. And I'll get into that a little bit more here. Yet watching what we're eating is really important during this time frame, because one of the things that we're running into, especially with a lot of empaths out there right now who are being ignited by the type of energies that we've got onto the earth. A lot of the empaths that we are running into right now are experiencing a lot of fatigue. They're experiencing a lot of nutritional aspects being eaten out of the bloodstream, which is really, really tough for some people. That's rough. So when we talk about what do we do during this time frame so that we don't feel as drug out or as terrible or as icky or any of these things, one of the things that we can look forward to is prescriptive stones. And I'll tell you, gang, it does matter what we put in our mouth at this time in life. It just does, especially with corresponding spiritual gifts. And I'll make sure to get into that and explain what the heck it is that we're talking about today. Yet I want you to think first and foremost about the human body, okay? Not only is an electromagnetic semiconductor, yet the human body requires certain nutrients to achieve certain goals. That's just the way it is. And when we have an opportunity to look at our Olympic athletes, I mean, especially with the Olympics not being so far in the rearview mirror here, we have an opportunity to see that certain nutrition absolutely affects the body in a very specific way. And that's just true. I mean, I cannot be an Olympic athlete and eat donuts all day. There's no way, because my body, when it needs to be oxygenated, when my muscles need that kind of strength and protein base, when my bones need to be fortified in a certain way, if my body is trying to burn just really weird garden variety, canola oils as any type of substance that would cause my body to build muscle or build calcium or build oxygenated systems in my blood, you're not going to get that from canola oil. Okay. So, what we're going to be talking about today is not only how do we enable these prescriptive stones, and I'm talking about things like, we like to wear quartz crystals, yet prescriptive stones go so much further than just a clear quartz crystal, which is super if that's your thing. What I'm talking about is a full range of prescriptive stones, and I'm just going to touch on a few of them here that keep coming through the angelic realm all the time for people. And usually when angels start repeating themselves, that has to do with geomagnetic indexes with the earth. And when these angels are giving out similar types of prescriptive stones to people in readings, because those people and their bodies and their chakral points and their spiritual gifts are needing a little more help, well, it's time to bring it to the masses, people. It's just what time it is. So what I'd like to talk about is how the body requires certain, not only, see this sound? You hear that sound? That is a Sharpie, and I'm writing this as I go because I'm channeling the information for today, and I want to make sure that when I write the summary for this particular episode, I'm getting all the details in. So if you hear a squeaky squeak, that is a black Sharpie in the background. That is how high-tech I am here in the inPsight Radio studios. So there you go. So anyway, the body requires a certain kind of nutrition to fuel different types of gifts, okay? And what's fascinating about this is when we're looking at the different gifts, we are looking at different types of eating styles. And I want to touch on that lightly, because I could go on and on and on and on and get really in depth with the different types of eating styles for the different spiritual gifts that we all have. However, I'm going to hit some main bullet points here. And I really hope today that if you have an opportunity to make a few notes on this one, this is not a classroom series, but I'm hoping that you will, because gang, we don't need to feel like garbage every day. We just don't. And the way that we have been feeding ourselves over the last 60 or 70 years really does point us in a direction to feel cruddy. That's the truth. So what I'd like to talk about first is the fact that our bodies require different physical nutrition to really fuel differing types of spiritual gifts. Empaths, the gift of empathy, where you have an enlarged heart chakra, which sounds like a bad medical condition, but when we're talking about the heart chakra, that's not a bad thing. When we have an enlarged heart chakra, that's a sign for somebody like me, who really is able to take a look at people and check out where they're at in life. That's a sign that that person is an empath. Large heart chakras, or having an enlarged heart chakra, then tends to pull more nutrients out of the bloodstream that are protein-based and mineral-based. This is a true deal. So you'll see a lot of empaths who require a higher protein index. And there's a lot of empaths out there who have chosen not to eat meat for many different reasons. One of them being is that now they're pointing to certain meat products, or the overconsumption of certain meat products, to actually feed the cancer virus. So if you're out there and you are struggling with cancer recovery, you're going to want to cut all meat out of your diet across the board. You got to cut that out, because cancer as a virus eats that meat protein. Now, I'm not suggesting if you eat meat, you're going to get cancer, because we don't need to go to that histrionic place when we hear something like this. We're talking about eating for the gift of empathy here. So empaths, and that's, if you're an empath, you are sucking in a bunch of information through that heart chakra. You're breaking down that information. You are literally decoding emotional impulses to pull out very pertinent data. We tend to encode emotionally and energetically a lot of information in our energetic impulses. So if you think about emotions as being a hard drive, one emotion, sadness, happiness, joy, despair, can hold terabytes of detailed information. And for an empath who is decoding or reading those energy fields of emotionality that are coming through the ether sphere, through the heart chakra is where we empaths decode all that information, then decoding that information requires energy, people. Energy, right? So it just like your computer requires electricity to run the functions and run the hard drive and run all of the individualized functions that computer is programmed with. It takes electricity. So we're talking about the gift of empathy right now. We're talking about what fuels that great big giant enlarged, which is a positive thing for the empaths, enlarged heart chakra. We're talking about what in the body fuels that decoding process. All those terabytes of information from all those different emotions. Well, the body is going to pull high concentrations of protein out of your bloodstream to run that heart chakra. It's part of how we work as empaths. And, I've actually sat down with people in the field, in the metaphysical field, and tried to talk about how much the differing spiritual gifts take out of the body in terms of mineral content, protein content, vitamin content. And I've had some people in my field who get really offended by that particular train of thought, because the way they look at it, the spirit is separate from the body. Therefore, it does not take any type of, shall we say, energy from the body to run the spiritual attributes like our chakras. That has not been my observation of our chakral system in the physical body. Our chakras are literally energy rivets, gang, energy rivets that hold the spirit into the flesh. And so if you think about the chakra being a connecting point between the flesh and the spirit, well, whenever you have something that holds two things together, like a washer or a screw or a nut or a bolt, there's friction there. And that friction is where we burn energy. So the body does burn energy differently if you are an empath than if that is not your primary strength. Okay, are you following me? I can't be the Olympic athlete and eat the same way as somebody who is just going to maybe Pilates a couple of times a week. I've got to eat a completely specialized way because I'm asking the body to do something very specialized. Okay? So those empaths out there, when you're hearing this, understand that with that large heart chakra, you are asking the body to do something special. You're asking the body to use its resources to decode terabytes of information coming through that large heart chakra to really break down that information so that you can echolocate all sorts of details in your surroundings and with people and in your environment. Okay? So, all of you empaths out there, it is important that you understand that that heart chakra's main physical fuel source is proteins. Proteins. Now, if you are somebody who is not fighting cancer, if you're somebody who eats meat, then the Bs, B12, B6, B3, the Bs that are found in healthy, non-hormone soaked red meat, whether it's elk, whether it's cow, whether it's bison, those Bs in that rare red meat are fantastic, not only for the mineral content in the bloodstream that empaths tend to eat out of the bloodstream, which are the B vitamins, B as in Bob. The empaths eat a lot of D, D as in dog. If you're an empath and you have seasonal, what's it called? Seasonal disaffective disorder. I've got that wrong. But basically, in the wintertime, when there's less sun and the brain is not triggered by that lack of sun, the brain isn't producing vitamin D. A lot of times you'll see empaths get really depressed during the wintertime when we have less light. So empaths, all humans, obviously, vitamin D is important. Empaths, we are burning D as in dog. We're burning vitamin D out of the bloodstream to fuel that heart chakra. Okay. We are also burning lots of proteins. So if you're someone listening who is not a meat eater, and hey, that's just your choice, or you're fighting cancer or whatnot, make sure that those plant proteins are your high concentrations of those plant proteins, okay? Because the body needs that particular type of nutrient to handle the friction that's going on between that heart chakra and the physical body. So B's, D's, protein, and iron. Iron empaths. You find so many empaths out there that are anemic. We are burning tons of iron out of the body when we process the gift of empathy through the heart chakra. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, it's obviously a big deal because if you think about it, the gift of empathy, gang, that enlarged or that large heart chakra burns more energy. It burns more energy than any of the other spiritual gifts. Empathy, the gift of empathy burns more energy, it's important you hear this, than any of the other psychic or spiritual gifts. Well, why is that? Well, because you are decoding, if you think of a DNA strand that's floating through the ether sphere, the heart chakra is pulling massive, dense amounts of information off of emotionality. The hows, the whys, the wheres, all of this is encoded in one emotional outburst with someone. the past, the present, the future, all the fears, all the joys. There is a dense cube of information in every decode that goes through the heart chakra. So if you think about energies, well, how is energy transferred? Through salt, obviously, through water, obviously, also through metals. And when we talk about iron and we talk about metals that conduct electricity, we've got iron in the bloodstream, obviously. So when we are, think about this now, when we are processing all of that heavy emotionality through the heart chakra, we are extracting iron out of the blood as a lubricant in essence. And this is a kind of a weird way to put it, as a lubricant for this energy to be transferred through the ether sphere, translated into a physical sensation that we can then feel and translate up to the brain to decode. So empaths, protein, high protein contents, B as in Bob, D as in dog, and iron. And for those meat-eating empaths, again, if you can eat your red meat that is obviously hormone-free, antibiotic-free. My wife and I are lucky enough to live in Montana, and we order from an organic ranch. We order cows who are grass-fed, grass-finished. There's no hormones involved, and when they go ahead and humanely slaughter those cows, which is just gross to say, humanely slaughter. However, there's nothing in those cows except for what they'd naturally be eating in nature. So if you are a meat eater, then you want to try to get as clean a red meat as you can, yet you're going to find a lot of iron in the rarer red meat. So those of you that can stand meat and those of you that can stand meat rare, and those of you that are empaths, red meat anyway, this is going to really fortify the blood. Now, that's not for everybody. There's a lot of people, like I said, out there who are vegan, there's a lot of people switching over to not eat meat, and that's great too. We're making huge strides in plant proteins. Yeah, just make sure that you're getting that high iron content also, which is very helpful. Okay? So that's eating for the gift of empathy. Now we're going to move on, and the reason I spent so much time on that is because we as human beings down here on Earth, we as human beings are all empaths to a degree. It is part of our genome. So we are all empaths to one degree or another down here. The gift of empathy is then again a big part of that, which is, like I always say, I can dribble a basketball, but I am never going to be Shaquille O'Neal, okay? I can dribble, but I'm never going to be a superstar. So even though it is innate to the human species to empathically Bluetooth to one another, not every human being is going to take that into the gift of empathy. However, we are empaths to a degree, which is why one of the reasons is because we've got so much iron in the blood, and the iron feeds the heart chakra. Are you seeing how this all kind of connects here? Okay. So now we're going to move on to the clairvoyant aptitudes, clairvoyance. That is seeing the quote future. And I say quote future, I'm doing finger quotes, but you can't see that because I'm on the radio right now. I'm doing finger quotes. And what we have an opportunity to see here is the future, of course, is built on the highest probability of action that we are going to take. Okay. So when we're talking about clairvoyance, we're talking about running energy through the third eye, which is a very concentrated chakral portal that's right above the brown line, kind of right in the middle of the forehead there, a little lower than the middle. That is the third eye. And also the clair gifts, clairaudience, the clairaudience is your ears, but it's still coming through that third eye. Clairsentience is just knowing stuff. You may not know the future per se, but you might look at a system or a house plan or a situation on the news, and you just know how it's going to go. That's called clairsentience, just knowing stuff in the future. Or being able to untangle the celestial pickup sticks in a pile. That is called clairsentience. So if you're running the Claire Gifts, gang, that is the third eye, and it's also the crown chakra above the head. So what does that burn up? Well, it does tend to burn, some of the different minerals out of the body or whatever. This is not as protein-based as it is salmon. Salmon is great because, again, you're running through the brain, you're running through the pineal gland. So anything that enables brain function, especially frontal lobe function, the amino acids, foods high in amino acids are amazing. Foods high in like fish oil, for instance, is fantastic for the Claire Gifts because you're running all of that through a mental scape, and it's not taxing the blood as much as it is taking resources out of the synaptic relays of the brain and the mind. So, fish is brain food, and it's actually salmon is great brain food. And it's got all of those oils within it that also help stabilize brain function. Anything that is brain function oriented, ginsengs, turmeric. Turmeric is fantastic for the Claire Gifts. And here's the thing about turmeric that you may not know. Turmeric really cannot be activated in the body without pepper, ground black pepper. Pepper has to accompany turmeric in order for it to be activated. And if turmeric spends too much time hitting oxygen, it takes away its potency. So there's a few manufacturers of turmeric out there that grow organic turmeric and then embed the turmeric with black pepper and seal it in capsules so that the air doesn't get to it. I know there's a company called Kangen, Kangen, that has extremely high-rated turmeric that people have used in their fight against cancer. And you can check that out on pubmed.gov. It's a government website that evaluates food and drug content. But turmeric is great for that also. So you want to make sure to feed the brain and make sure, again, to get those amino acids up there. You also want to make sure to get those fish oils up there. If you can stand salmon, get it in your body. That's going to help. And this is a weird deal, but niacin, the Claire Gifts eat niacin out of the body and bloodstream. And niacin, of course, is the little happy mineral that connects and inspires blood flow. And the brain, obviously, is heavily dependent upon blood flow, especially when it is developing individualized the little bridges that we like to call synaptic nerves up there. So niacin is a big one for the clairsentient clairvoyant gifts. This is a biggie. Now, I suggest everybody really fortify the body across the board in many ways, okay? Yet, really, we can go with our fish oils, we can go with our salmons, we can go with our niacins. If all you ever want to do is focus on strengthening your Claire Gifts. That's what it eats out of the body mostly. So then we move on to the channeling aptitudes. And the channeling aptitudes are kind of a wide swath, gang. They're really a wide swath. Those are mediumship, divination. Divination is a channeling aptitude. That's for those of you that read tarot, or maybe you have a pendulum, or you throw runes, or you throw bones, or you read. This is all the channeling of information, either through visual signs in the mind or through signs and wonders. Externally, that's a channeling gift. It's a divination gift. And really, they are slightly different gifts when you really break them down, yet they use the same attributes out of the body. They do. So when you're dealing with those attributes, you're dealing with a combination of chakral points. Channeling will activate the heart chakra. It activates the crown chakra. It activates the third eye. It can even activate that solar plexus chakra, the little guy down there that's working real hard between your belly button and your heart chakra, between the sacral, which is your belly button, and the heart. So when you're dealing with these channeling, you're dealing with bringing something through the body. okay? And the channeling aptitudes, honestly, more than the blood, tends to affect the actual internal organs. So you're going to be wanting to supplement the body in this internal organ arena with anything that helps the filter organs. So if you find yourself channeling a lot of angels, like I do all day, if you're channeling dead people, which aren't actually dead, they're alive, but the body is dead, and we like to call them dead people because it's more fun. So if you're channeling humans without a body, you're channeling information through runes, whatever it is, you're going to want to make sure that you are keeping your internal organs flushed out. Dandelion root is an incredible tool to flush out the liver, to flush out the kidneys. One of my favorite things that I find to flush out the liver and kidneys is this funky, it's like an instant powder stuff that's called Dandy Blend. It's called Dandy Blend. And part of it is chicory, and the other part of it is just dandelion root. And you can just mix it. As a matter of fact, I'm drinking some right now because I'm a person that fortifies the body for the gift of empathy, the clairsentient gifts, and the channeling gifts, which means that I eat like a flippin' horse very specifically all the time. I am constantly eating and constantly moving because otherwise my body experiences a lot of problems. I have this whole weird workout regimen that we'll get to in a minute, because also when you're eating for the body and you're eating for all these gifts, we've got to move the body also. But back to the channeling aptitudes. So Dandy Blend really does help flush out a lot of these internal organs. Licorice root is another one that is a fantastic detoxifier. Now, there are many, many, many detoxifiers out there. So you want to make sure that you're doing an equal balance of fortifying the body as well as detoxing the body. Zinc is a very important mineral if you're doing any sort of channeling or any sort of divination. And I've just noticed that a lot of the zinc gets pulled out of the bloodstream during the channeling process. And I can't even tell you why exactly. That's one I can't tell you why. Yet I can tell you that the zinc in the channeling process is highly important. And I think part of that has to do with the channeling works through so many different chakra points that the zinc is also walking a fine line with the neural net up there with the upstairs functions when we're dealing with the clair gifts. So as you can see, eating healthily, okay, and making sure that all of the body is detoxed on a regular basis is a key component to utilizing your spiritual gifts. Now, I want to get in here just a few things that if you do eat and you're an empath specifically, but really any of these spiritual gifts will be impaired by these foods. If you eat these foods, it's going to set you back. And I'm sorry, gang, I didn't make this stuff up. It just is what it is, okay? We're going to start back in the 1950s with this little history lesson on why the American government has allowed so much crapola in our food. Back in the 1950s, we weren't as concerned with people living long, with people being well. We weren't as concerned with our populations being healthy. And we were much more concerned with selling byproducts from the food that we manufactured. The 1950s was the first time that if you look up the history of our American government, the 1950s was the first time you really started seeing hardcore lobbying in our federal Congress for the food industry to be given certain rules and regulations that are different. And this was because as our population began growing and all of our men and women came back from the war, we started needing more food resources. So all of a sudden there's more mouths to feed that are home. So we're manufacturing more corn products because corn, of course, is a major export of the United States, as is wheat. So back in the 1950s, corn was a big staple. And in manufacturing corn and growing corn, but then, of course, breaking it down in the manufacturing process, a majority of the corn was going to feed cows and feed livestock. And then some was to feed people. Well, in the processing of all of this corn, they came out with a lot of sugar that came out of the corn. The sugar was kind of watery and weird. So they added some additives to the watery, weird sugar that came out of the corn. And we got an incredible ingredient that became a staple in American food and still is to this day, and now is finally getting called out. So this staple is getting cut back, or people are labeling it as other things. But that staple is corn syrup. Corn syrup. I mean, I grew up with corn syrup, man. I'm 49 years old. There's corn syrup in Rice Krispie treats. My God, there's corn syrup in everything. Why is corn syrup such a big deal to eat if you are somebody who's focusing on your spiritual gifts? Well, I'll tell you why. First of all, a lot of it is synthesized. And they took the sugar content, and I'll spare you the dynamics of actually how they make corn syrup. But basically, they get corn sugar and they jack it up a whole bunch of times by adding a bunch of weird stuff to it. And basically, corn syrup is about 2 or 3 clicks off of a melted shower curtain. That's really true. And because of the super high concentration of sugar that is then again almost synthesized to a degree, it can get you high as a flipping kite, and it's insanely addictive. True story, man. Do you know the most addictive substance in America today? I'm going to give you a quiz. Oh, I'm having so much fun with you, gang. This is so fun. I'm such a science nerd. This is so fun. Okay, what is the most addictive substance in America? Opioids. A, opioids. B, methamphetamines. C, sugar. D, caffeine. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 brip, dee, 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 dee. Okay. The answer is sugar. Sugar. Sugar is a bazillion times more addictive, and that's not actually the scientific term, but it's way more addictive than any of those other substances. And the body and the brain and the metabolism becomes addicted to the sugar immediately. So if we're looking at a jacked up, fakey sugar, which has been synthesized to be like a super sugar, which is called corn syrup, and we've been putting it in everything in our food, especially since the late 40s into the 50s, all the way on up, what have we been doing to the body? We've been genetically altering the body by putting in a false substance that the body then doesn't know how to break down, so it passes it around in fat cells forever, going, can you handle this? No, I really can't. Can you handle this? No, I don't even know what this is. This is disgusting. I don't want this. And we keep it in the body, using resources in the body, trying to figure out how to break down the synthetic substance, which finally, after it gives up, the body passes it on. But the pass around through your system takes forever. And that uses a lot of energy. And in the meantime, you get highly addicted to the stuff with the corn syrup in it. What has corn syrup in it? Oh, you know, everything. Soda pop, candy, breakfast cereals, teriyaki sauce, barbecue sauce. Everything has corn syrup in it. But why, we say? Why? Why would the American government put something like corn syrup in our food when they know it causes addiction? Well, because we buy a bazillion times more of that particular soda pop, or that we get that crazy craving for that barbecue sauce. I mean, there's so much corn syrup in fast food. So if you can eliminate one thing out of your diet because you're trying to fortify your spiritual gifts, please cut out the corn syrup, and it's going to freak you the flip right out next time you go to the grocery store and you look and you find corn syrup is in absolutely everything because it's cheap and it's addictive and they want you to buy more stuff. Okay? So you want to stay away from corn syrup. Corn syrup gives a false high or a false positive to your blood sugar. And you empaths, it'll spike your blood sugar, and then you will have a hypoglycemic bottom out on the other side because your body is fooled into thinking that your blood sugar is to a place that's healthy. Are you following? So I know I sound like a conspiratist a-hole sometimes, gang. I know that. Fact of the matter is, I wouldn't be telling you this stuff if there was not a basis for this information. It doesn't make me happy to pass on spooky stuff. It makes me happy to pass it on so that you don't get sucked in by it. Yet I'm not a histrionic person. My wife is a health professional. And I'll tell you a little quick story. My wife, Rebecca, used to tell me all this stuff when we started dating 5 years ago. And I, honest to God, thought she was just some sanctimonious hippie who was a complete zealot about what she ate. I seriously did. And so I just went and researched it because I poo-pooed what she said to me, thinking, well, of course, you're the workout lady. You run a boot camp. You work out 5 days a week. Of course, you think these things. That's what hippies think. You lived on Vashon Island in Washington. I mean, I was kind of a jerk about it, to be perfectly honest. And so my body was like, hey, listen to your wife, you weirdo. And then I started paying attention and listening to the resonances of these food. And that corn syrup is just super wicked bad for your brain, for your body, for your internal organs. So please do your best to, if you're a spiritual person and you want to develop your spiritual gifts and you're working on your health, try to get that out of your diet. That is a roughie. That's rough. The other ones like aspartame and all the fake sweeteners and the fake sugarers, you guys, those are so bad for your body. We now have monk fruit sweetener. We have all kinds of amazing things like stevia, which is a plant. And again, this isn't a nutritional lecture. It's a talk about how the heck we can fortify the body to withstand these changing times. Why am I bringing all this up? Is it just to give you the lecture of don't eat your favorite Krispy Kreme? I love Krispy Kreme. Come on. I'm not saying never eat a sweet thing again. Just consuming it every single flipping day, many times a day. Most Americans have a soda up to 5 times a day. Can you imagine all those chemicals? That's just bad news, man. If you gotta have soda, there's a soda out there called Zevia. And by the way, I don't get one stitch of kickback from any of these products. So before I start catching grief from everybody about, you're mentioning products. No, I don't get any kickback from it. It's stuff that I know works. The Zevia is a soda with natural ingredients. It doesn't have caffeine. It's fizzy. It tastes good. So if you're a person who's addicted to sodas, that might be a decent bridge for you. Okay. And it's important that we watch what we eat and we watch what's going into our body during these transformational and ascension timeframes because our DNA is being activated, gang. The resonation of the earth, the vibration of the earth is statistically always at 7.83 hertz, although the Schumann resonance does vary, but it doesn't change. I mean, I know we've seen those memes out there. The Schumann resonance is changing with the consciousness of the earth. Well, that's not really true. It does alter depending on where you're measuring it. However, what is changing is the ethereal vibration of the earth, and we can measure that through the plasma in the ionosphere. So that is changing. We might not be measuring it in the Schumann resonance, but the ionosphere plasma vibrates at a different level. And that also is through no help through the Harper rays, and we're not going to cover that this particular show. However, I think I'm going to take my little Sharpie here and write down for the next episode, we are going to cover HARP and weather augmentation, and we're also going to talk next show about what this is all doing to our spiritual gifts. But for right now, we're going to stick to what we're talking about, which is making sure that you're eating well and fortifying the body with prescriptive stones so that we can set our physicality up in a strong way. What's going on is that the resonation is coming out of this ionosphere, and these are broad brushstrokes. We'll get more into this on another show, but it is activating those lower 10 rungs of our DNA. We only operate off those the top 2, and then those lower 10 rungs are called junk DNA or whatever, and that's obviously not junk, yet that's being activated by, of course, resonation. That DNA is asking our spiritual body to filter and operate and translate more information through our chakral system. Our chakral system then goes to the body and says, hey, bud, I'm attached to you. So what resources do you have that can help run the energy that I'm running through here? And if we just hand those chakral points in our body that are being activated by our DNA opening up due to a hyperresonation in our ionosphere, which is coming out of a higher consciousness shift, and we hand those chakral points a freaking donut, we got problems. We got problems. So this is why I'm telling everybody this stuff. It's important. I would recommend to all of you out there, I realize money's not growing on trees for folk, but yet if you think about what we spend our money on, if you think about the fact that we drop $5 a time on a latte, that happens dozens of times a week. Come on, be honest. That happens dozens of times a week if you're buying one for yourself or your friend, or going out to eat, or every time you drop $30 on a pizza. That money can be saved up for body work. And I highly recommend in fortifying the flesh, reflexology. For those of you that can stand needles, acupuncture is great. Yet overall, reflexology, moving the chi through the body, is excellent. Cranial sacral therapies is excellent. We're talking about fortifying the chakral points in the body to be able to work with the flesh so that we can then actually give space physically and mentally and spiritually to all of this information that's flooding out of those lower 10 rungs of our DNA. Are you seeing how this is all linked together here? It's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a great big fat deal. So while all this is going on, you're also going to want to move the body. If you got to take a walk, if you can't take a walk, move the body somehow, move the arms, move the upper torso, bend over, do something. I go to yoga. I'm trying to go twice a week. I go once a week right now, and I go to boot camp a couple of times a week, and I get that heart rate up. You want to get that heart rate elevated. Why? Because when you elevate your heart rate, you oxygenate the blood. When you oxygenate the blood, you move the blood. When you move the blood, you flush out toxins. And we are uptaking toxins like crazy right now. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So, are you with me so far? Let's talk prescriptive stones. You guys are like, wait a minute, where's the stones? I got a lecture about my Krispy Kreme. I just want to know what I do with the crystal. You're a downer today, Danielle. Come on. Stones. I am getting over and over with readings. When I am reading for people, this litany of stones is coming through. And of course, angels personalize those prescriptive stones for individuals. Yet what I'm noting is a number of these stones are showing up over and over and over and over again. So these are the ones that I'd like to bring forward. Obviously, I talk a lot about black tourmaline. And black tourmaline you can wear right between the breasts, right between the pecs, gentlemen, over the heart chakra, and it filters out chaotic energies. We have a lot of chaotic energies in our ascension process, just as we talked. That ionosphere is resonating this ether sphere differently. And it is causing a vibrational ascension to happen. And whenever we have vibrational physics out there, we are vibrating all kinds of energies into the energy through which we travel every day. Black tourmaline helps screen a lot of the chaos out of that ether sphere before it passes it through to the heart chakra. What did we learn today that the heart chakra can be? Well, one of the largest processing agents for energy, especially if you're an empath. So black tourmaline is very helpful for screening out that vibration. I'm getting a stone a lot of times for people called labradorite. And I kept hearing this thing like Labrador Retriever. I think these angels were probably getting tired of me not knowing how to pronounce this. However, the labradorite helps bring the internal confidence of the self forward while cutting chaos coming into the mind or into the chakral system that would cause the self to then want to break down and not express the self. And really what we're dealing with in this particular time frame is we are really dealing with I would say a form of finding our voice right now in our ascension process. So labradorite really helps us with that throat chakra and bringing forward our best attributes without feeling intimidated not to. It's a cool stone. It's really pretty. Labradorite's great. Another stone that's coming through like crazy for folks is citrine. Citrine, which is, it's not the most dynamic looking of all stones. It's kind of it can be an orangish or yellowish crystal looking quartzy thing. And citrine helps with purification. It helps with purification. And you guys, feel free to just really get online and research labradorite and black tourmaline and citrine. I mean, this is important stuff, right? So when you have this opportunity for purification, look at all the discussion that we had over the channeling aptitudes using up resources in our organs or filter organs specifically, and how if we're dealing with citrine, this deals with purification. And it's a mood elevator also, citrine. So, we can go ahead and put together all sorts of conglomerations of these stones. Another one that's been coming through for people, and this makes me laugh because it makes me think of the 80s. I'm not kidding. Is just garden variety rose quartz. Rose quartz was such a big deal in the 80s, and we didn't even know what it did back then, but everybody had a cat carved in rose quartz, or a heart carved in rose quartz, or a rose carved in rose quartz. Rose quartz is a heart chakra fortifier. And again, it does not shock me in this time frame when so many people's empathic gifts are being ignited. It really doesn't shock me that rose quartz then comes into play for people, because that is just a very important part of us as a species, is that empathic sense. Another one that's been coming up, the ferromagnetic stones, and there's quite a number of those. There's shungite, which can or can't be ferromagnetic depending on how much ore is in it. Shungite is not as ferromagnetic, say, as hematite. However, shungite is a stone that's coming forward like mad today. It is an EMF screener. It screens out a lot of the EMF in the ether sphere. And we have a lot of electrosmog and EMF poisoning out in the air that affects the brain. It affects developing fetuses, all kinds of things. And I know sometimes I do sound like a big conspiratist weirdo broadcasting up here in Montana. However, it is a fact that we have nearly 4,000, I think we've actually crested past 4,000 satellites in our atmosphere of Earth, shooting all kinds of signals to our planet. That's a heck of a lot of all kinds of waves going through our atmosphere. And most of us are attached to a cell phone. And of course, that's an electromagnetic frequency. That's an EMF frequency. So shungite, Shungite, which is really, it's mined up in a certain part of Russia. You can only find it in about a 5,000 square mile area up there. It's black oftentimes, or sometimes it's actually kind of a grayish metallic color. And again, if you get the metallic looking stuff, it can be a bit more ferromagnetic. But it's a good grounding stone, and it's a good stone to cut a bunch of junk out of the atmosphere for you, which personally, if you're like me, I appreciate that. I like that. So, obviously hematite, that's a great stone for grounding, and it does help regulate iron in the body. Anytime you wear magnets, it helps regulate the iron in the body, because obviously magnets pull the ferromagnetic material in the blood, which is all of our heavy metals. And copper is fantastic for people right now, especially folks who are really doing a lot of the channeling, or folks who are using a lot of your clair gifts. Okay. Copper is obviously a conductive element, and to wear just as pure copper as you can get it, you would think it would conduct a lot of EMF and everything in the atmosphere. Actually, what it does is amplify the body's own electrical current when interfacing with the chakral system of the body. Hey, if you got some extra cash out there, gold is unbelievable for that too. Why do you think all those Aztec priests covered their chests and their heads and their wrists in just huge gold slabs? Well, all of that is conducting energy of the body. And priests all over the flippin' world and priestesses, people, holy people in very ancient cultures, covered their body with these huge gold plates all over the place, especially around the heart chakra and the head. You ever notice the gold headbands, gold crowns? Humans are naturally attracted to placing conductive metals in areas of chakral activity, like a crown on the head or a funky headband. We saw a lot of that in the Celtic cultures or the cultures in India. Those crowns came right across the forehead. Or we have huge energetic chakras in the hands and in the wrists, which is, and really, again, we're attracted to the power centers of the body. When the Romans crucified people, they put a stake through the palm, and then they put a stake right through the wrist, so it would hold you up by the wrist bones, actually, which is really gross. And normally people died from crucifixion, not from bleeding to death, but from suffocation, from the weight of their body pulling down, and they couldn't support their weight anymore, and they'd suffocate. However, having metal driven through those heart and wrist chakras, which are huge input and output areas of the body, that's like somebody just stuffing a potato in your tailpipe and then telling you to have a drag race over 200 miles. I mean, you're going to blow up your engine because there's no way for that energy to get out. It's interrupted. So even the Romans, in their twisted up way, they got that information. They got crucifixions from the Mongols, from China. China originally crucified people, and China had an incredible knowledge of the chi system of the body and of the chakral system. So when we look at interrupting the body, we can do it chemically, corn syrup. We can do it physically, spikes through anybody's hands is going to get your full attention, but we can do it physically by not moving. Certainly crucifixion is a vast stretch of being interrupted physically. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can interrupt our spiritual communication with our chakral system. And prescriptive stones are incredible for helping us bridge some of those areas that we just don't, as human beings, we're just not sure what to do sometimes. Because with the spirit, because we've been so trained to pay attention to the flesh. Yeah, you've heard me talk a lot about mind, body, spirit, right? And you're going to hear me talk about, corn syrup bad, natural food good. That's going to be a recurring thing through this podcast because we as human beings, on average, need to hear a fact at least 20 times before we decide that it has merit, says the media corporations who have done the studies on repetitive advertising. So if you're hearing me repeat stuff on inPsight Radio, it's because we as a species seem to need it. There it is. There it is. The last prescriptive stone that I would like to bring forward that I am receiving for people oftentimes is a weird stone. It's called K2. K is in Kellogg's. 2, the number 2, K2. It's named after the mountain, K2, where it is quarried. And it's a really funky looking type of granite, really. It's white with black speckles and gray speckles in it. And then it has these blue orbs, these blue circles all over the place within it. Now, for many, many years, there was just huge speculation about what those blue circles in the K2 were. And finally, somebody sent one to some super electron microscope or whatnot, and they broke it down. And they realized that the blue circles were oxidized copper. Oxidized copper. Now, this is where this gets super funky, okay? Granite is one of the most dense, hard substances on Earth. I mean, they make countertops out of granite because you can't put a cut mark into them when you polish them up. They're like diamond. I mean, they're just right off of a diamond. Granite is super, super, super dense and really, really hard. And now, when you look at the K2, it's got this really, really pretty big blue dots in it that came from tiny particles of copper being blown into the granite with just enough liquid to oxidize. So what that means is the granite had to flex enough for microscopic particles of water and copper to be, think of like sandblasted deep into this granite for that copper to be able to turn blue and oxidize. Why is that weird? Well, it's weird because of the nature of granite and how pristine the oxidized copper is. It's not unusual for mineral contents to get into very, very hard rocks and turn them color. Iron turns rocks red. We have a lot of red rocks out here in Montana. What's weird about that is that the individual pieces of copper got so deep into that granite and then basically got sealed off and had just enough liquid to oxidize. That's bizarre. You know what that takes? It takes a lot of pressure. It takes a huge explosion to do that. And I will get into on another show Atlantis and Lemuria and what actually happened with Atlantis. Okay? And I've got the little Sharpie here. I've got the Sharpie. I'm going to write that down right here. Atlantis. All right. And we'll talk about that maybe next episode too. But the reason I'm bringing up K2 is it's coming through for people because that particular crystalline granite with this oxidized copper in it is also carrying some serious off-world mojo in it. And when you study Atlantis, the true Atlantis, not just the stories of a sunken island, but you really get into what Atlantis was, that was an off-world installation. And we'll get to that. I know this is a teaser. It's teaser for next week. However, this K2 has off-world resonation in it. And if you think about a giant explosion or a massive nuclear explosion or something that would blow energy into the ground and microscopic particles of metal into solid rock like that on a microscopic level, you're dealing with a massive temporal type explosion. You really are looking at almost a nuclear explosion on steroids. Okay, that's the only thing big enough to do that. So this K2 that comes out of this one section of the K2 mountain, okay, it only is mined there, was literally a piece of shallow ocean bed that received a big boom from that Atlantis and Lemuria time period. And what ended up happening is this stone itself is incredible for the third eye and the crown chakra. It opens up the third eye and the crown chakra like you would not believe. I mean, it literally has the energies from those off-world cultures that Otur, this culture, Otur, it's a big old world out there. We like to call them Arcturians here on Earth, but actually the world is Oturan. So you've got this world out there. Those guys are all telepathic communicators. And then you've got the folks from Sirius AB. They're the ones who helped build the pyramids. You've got all of what we like to call the Palladians. All of these folks are telepathic communicators. And you, just in the bullet point in the last few minutes we have, you take those civilizations, you blow all that energy into microscopic particles, you embed it into crystalline granite, and basically what you've got in the K2 is a conductor for that ancient knowledge. It's really, really cool. And if you think I'm full of beans, go order yourself some K2, wear it for a while, and see if that doesn't make you feel like you're just connecting to the heavens, because that's what it does. It opens up that third eye and crown chakra. And we are so needing connection to higher source right now because that is tough for people to make those connections through all of the electrosmog, through all of the toxins in the body. So that's just a real super scam of K2. It gets really deep in there and off-world cultures and whatever else. Yet these are stones that are coming through for folks regularly. Another funky thing about K2 is that if you wear it regularly, I've got a piece of K2 that almost has gone completely clear because of the energy work that I do. And it's about, my K2 piece, it's about here on the 4A chakra. It falls in a necklace between my heart chakra and my throat chakra. And I haven't worn it recently, yet it started out white. And then the whole stone has just been going clear. The K2 stone absorbs energies differently. I have a really good friend of mine, and her K2 stone is turning green. And before you say, well, that's just body oils. Actually, it's not, because my K2 has got a bracket around it. It's a silver bracket that prohibits that K2 from touching my skin. So if it were just body oils, it would probably be on the front part, but you would see a little ring around the back of the K2 stone where it never can come in contact with my skin back there. But this stone unilaterally is going clear because of the nature of the energy that's trapped in it and the nature of the energy that I transmit all the time. I have a friend whose K2 is turning yellow. So it's really bizarre. Mine got really, 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 really dark gray and then just started going transparent in pockets, which is kind of neat. Anyway, so today's show was super duper dense on nutritional factors, on prescriptive stones, on why to move the body to get the body oxygenated so that we can continue to flood those chakral points with the nutrients that they need, because spirit is not separate from the body, folks. Spirit is not separate from the body. The body and spirit are intertwined. The mind, the body, and the spirit, it's all one thing. So this week, when you go into your week and you're like, oh man, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling crispy, I'm feeling cranky, I'm feeling mad, blah. Try some of this stuff. Try it out. And give yourself 7 days of consistent change. Give yourself 2 weeks of consistent change, really. If you really want to feel the difference by implementing a little bit of body work, by implementing a particular stone that you'd like, by implementing moving the body in some way, by implementing cutting out the corn syrup. And by the way, when you do cut out that corn syrup and that sugar, you're going to feel a little like garbage, but just hang in there. You will feel better later. So it kind of feels like you have the flu. Gang, I can't believe we've already hit an hour on this. I could keep going, and maybe one of these days we can extend into a 2-hour podcast, but all of you might, just your brains might fall out listening to this kind of stuff for 2 hours. Yet I love being able to bring this to you. Tune in next week, and I've got my little piece of paper here where these angels told us what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about HAARP. We're going to be talking about chemtrails. We're going to be talking about, are those real? And we're going to be talking about, is weather augmentation real? And what the heck was going on with Atlantis? So thanks for tuning into inPsight Radio, and you all go have an incredible week.